going to go ahead and start. Stephen and I are going to talk about what's available and what's going on. Um, so you all are aware that, the GE regulations were passed back in October. The effective date was July 1st, 2024. We were supposed to start reporting information at that point. And then there were several lawsuits filed, but none of them actually postponed anything, even though we tried to get an injunction. On September 10th, 20 senators also requested Congress to delay the implementation until July of 25. The first report was going to be delayed until October 1st, and now we just got a dear colleague or electronic notice the other day telling us that we're now delayed until January 15th, 2025, when the first report will be due. So that's the page, the financial value transparency and gainful employment information. It's in the Knowledge Center and it has all the latest resources and updates. And Stephen also put a resource page at the end of this presentation. So that was just the August 30th that delayed everything until October 1st, and then the Gen 2408 on September 13th changed that reporting date to January 15th. So now you have lots of time to think about what you have to do. So we have two different components. We have the financial value transparency. That applies to all the GE programs and non-GE programs. And it basically is looking at the debt to earnings and the earnings premium for everybody. And it requires consumer information and some student acknowledgments in certain situations. Then we also have the gainful accountability. That only applies to the GE programs. It's debt to earning rates and the EP measurement impact, which really will affect your program eligibility. So if you fail 2 out of 3 years, either one of those, you don't have to fail both. It could be one year and one the other year. You would end up having to put some warnings out there for your students that basically said that the school could close, that they might not be able to finish their program. The Department of Ed is going to post all that on the website that they will have listed, but your students will have to acknowledge that they understand that. And we're not going to talk much about that. We're going to talk more about what we have to report up front. And then after that, if you have try to add new programs, etc., you may have to prove that they're not related to the old GE program. So the debt to earnings rate determination is based on the annual earnings rate is less than or equal to 8%, or the discretionary earnings rate is less than or equal to 20%. And the program passes the high debt burden if the annual earnings rate is greater than 8% and the discretionary earnings rate is greater than 20%. So there's a little metrics how to figure it out. The annual earnings rate, it's the annual loan repayment divided by the median annual earnings. And that median annual earnings are going to look at all your students, and they're going to go from the highest to the lowest, and then the one in the middle is the median annual earnings. And your discretionary earnings rate is the annual loan repayment divided by the median annual earnings minus 150% of the poverty guidelines. And the Department of Ed is going to do those calculations for you. You don't have to do them yet. Just wanted you to understand what they were. The annual loan repayment is calculated by determining the median loan debt of the students who completed the program during the applicable cohort and amortization of that debt, which includes direct loans except for Parent Plus, direct on sub loans that were converted from teacher grants. So the teach grants and those plus loans do not count. It does count private educational loans, and the total amount of any outstanding debt or any credit extended by the institution. So basically, it's looking at even if the student owes you money when they leave and you've set up a payment plan, that is still debt that's going to get counted. It counts any direct loans the student borrowed, the total amount dispersed, less any calculations, cancellations, adjustments, except for BDR claims. It does not, again, include the plus or the teach grants. And it does include private loans, including private educational loans made by the institution and the outstanding debt. So it also will count if you weren't aware that the student had a private loan, so you didn't certify it through the school, but they came in and say, hey, I went to my local bank and they went ahead and gave me money for my education. That is a private loan that's now going to count if you're aware of it, even though you didn't certify that loan. It didn't really go through the school or anything else. So the median earnings, they're going to get the information, the department, from the federal agency with the earnings data. The median annual earnings for the student on the completer list that the agency data was able to match to earnings data. So you could have 200 students on the completers list. They might only be able to match 50, but as long as they match at least 30, they're going to use the information for those students. And the number of students on the list of the agency could not match. So if they couldn't match it, they're not going to include those students. So you could have a lot of students that graduated and maybe had earnings, but if they can't pull that earnings up or match it, they're not going to show up. As long as, again, they had at least 30 students, the department will calculate the debt to earnings rates and the um, earnings premium measurement rate. So it's going to look at both. And what is that earnings premium measurement? It measures the program's earnings outcome by comparing completers' median annual earnings to the earnings threshold. So it's the median annual earnings to the earnings threshold. The program is low earning if the earnings premium is zero or a negative amount. So they're going to look at these students that graduated and then compare their earnings to the students that have been out of school for a while. So the threshold they're going to look at is for working adults between 25 and 34 with only a high school diploma or recognized equivalent who either worked during the year or indicated they were unemployed, not unemployed, but looking for and available for work. So you've got some that are, they have to be looking for work, etc. In the state where the institution is located, or nationally, if less than 50% of the students in the program are from the state where the institution is located, or in a foreign institution. And they're going to look at the information from the Census Bureau. So they're going to compare your students who have been graduated for a couple of years. I think the limit was 2 to 3 years, to students that actually could have some education, but supposedly only have a high school diploma and that have been working in the field for a long period of time because they could be 25 to 34. So we all know a lot of students, when they first get out of school, it takes a while for them to build up a clientele if they're in the beauty and wellness industry, or even if you go to work, with a business degree from a private career school. It may take a couple of years before you actually get into that top management position where you're making some decent money. The cohort periods used to determine the metrics depends on what you're using. It's either a 2 or 4 year cohort. The 2 year cohort is used if 30 or more students completed during the period. The 4 year cohort's used if you had fewer than 30 students. So you had a program that only had 25 Title IV students, but they had, the program maybe had 60 students. It's still only going to look at the Title IV students that completed during the 2 year period or 4 year period, depending on the situation. So there's a little chart, and the chart shows you the cohort period, whether it's a 2 year or a 4 year, the award years that they use for the calculations for the standard cohorts. The standard cohorts is going to be the students that you're going to use a longer period of time. And then you've got your periods for the transitional, and the transitionals for a 2 year period. So the transitional, you're using award years 22, 23, 23, 24. For the standard, you're using all the way from 17, 18 up to 21, 22. So I'm sorry, 17, 18. Let me backtrack. I'm sorry. If you're using the 2 year, it's 17, 18, 18, 19. If you're using the 4 year, it's 15, 16, all the way up to 18, 19. And then you use the award years for the cost of debt, qualifying grad programs. And then you have the calendar years used for the earnings. So the earning years you see are different than the cohort years that they're going to look at the beginning. And then the transitionals on the other end. So the transitional is a period that you decide that you're going to calculate the, the debt to earning rates or the earnings premium rate using the median debt for the period reported and the earnings for 6 years. So there you're using a 2 year and a 6 year. If you're using the traditional standard rates, you're going to use data elements for a longer period of time, many more years. Whatever period you decide to use, you have to use all the way. So if I decide to use transitional, the 2 year reporting, I use that for the next 6 years. If I decide to use the standard reporting, I have to use that for the next 6 years. And originally they said you could switch back and forth up until January, but that's when we had a 1st of July and then a October date. So I don't know if they'll give us a longer time to switch back and forth, or once we decide what we're doing on January 15th, that will be stuck to January 15th. So kind of think about what you're going to use and be sure that you're pretty well set with that's what you want to use. So we're going to report data elements by program. And for each of the GE and eligible non-GE programs, you have to report everything for 2023-24: the name of the program, the zip code, credential level, length of the program, how they're accredited, whether they have licensure problems or requirements, the total enrollment, both Title IV and non-Title IV recipients, and whether the program is a qualifying graduate program with students that have to complete postgraduate training program. Programs that you don't have to report are considered neither GE or non-GE programs. And there are a few of them, the approved comprehensive transitional post-secondary programs, approved prison education programs, which of course none of us have, post-baccalaureate teacher certificate programs where the institution does not award a credential, programs for at least 2 academic years in length that are acceptable for full credit toward a bachelor's degree, and the preparatory coursework for which eligible students could receive direct loan funds. So these are elements you have to report student by student, and there's a lot of them. You have to identify the student in the institution, the date the student enrolled in the program, attendance dates, attendance status, whether they were enrolled, withdrawn, completed, students' enrollment status as of the first day of the enrollment in the program. So that is full time, half time, 3/4 time. um, Cost of attendance, tuition and fees assessed for the student for the award year, tuition and status by state or district if you have a state allowance, students' annual allowance for books, supplies, and equipment from their cost of attendance, housing and food from their cost of attendance, grants and scholarships dispersed to the student, any other state or tribal aid, private grants, any amount of private educational loans dispersed to the student. And all of these are actually new from when we reported gainful employment in the prior world. So there was a lot of new information that had to be collected, and this information does get put into NSLDS. Most of it's collected through enrollment reporting. There is some student exclusions, so the students are excluded from both the numerator and denominator. Um, if one or more of the students' Title IV loans are considered to have been approved for total and permanent disability, the student enrolled full-time in an other eligible program at the same institution or another institution during the calendar year in which the earnings were measured. And that chart told you which earning years were involved. The student completed a higher level undergraduate or graduate program at the institution. The student enrolled in an improved prison education program or comprehensive transitional and post-secondary program, or the student has died. For grad or withdrawals, You have to report if the student withdrew in the program during their award year. The institution also has to report the date the student completed or withdrew from the program. And then you need information on the student's entire enrollment at that institution, the total amount of student private educational loans, or either they approved or should be reasonably aware of, total amount of institutional debt the student owes to any party, and the total tuition and fees assessed to the student for their entire program. Other information on grad or withdrawn students is total amount allowances for books and supplies and equipment, cost of attendance, the total amount of institutional grants and scholarships reported for the student's entire enrollment. And in the future years, the department plans to use this information that was reported to limit other reporting requirements. So this year, we have to do a lot of work. After this, it'll be more minimal reporting just for what the current year is. When you lose a GE program, it depends on obviously if their debt to earning rates measurement in 2 out of 3 consecutive award years fail, or if it fails the EP measurement for 2 out of 3 years, which is the earnings premium measurement, and it fails the GE certification requirements, so that your programs are no longer eligible under the GE certification requirements. The debt to earnings rate or the earnings premium measurement are not calculated for an award year. The program receives no result for that metric for that award year and remains eligible or in the same status as the previous year. So if I failed one year and I don't have anything for the next year, I still stay in that failed status, and that might put me in the 2 out of 3 years. Your period of eligibility is actually a 3-year period. So if I fail my program 2 out of 3 years, and then I would be not eligible for 3 years after that for any Title IV. And then I wouldn't even be able to recertify that program unless I could show that things had changed and there would be some reason it might be successful. You cannot apply to reestablish eligibility for the failing GE program if you voluntarily discontinue it until 3 years has lapsed. So again, it doesn't matter whether they kick you out or you decide you don't want to be in the program and you withdraw, you're still stuck with that 3 year before you can reapply. And after the period of ineligibility, if you want to reestablish a GE program eligibility, you have to apply and provide GE information and then see what happens. The department could decide not to approve it.
Thank you, Sally. So I'm going to be talking about our system-generated GE exports. So FAME, through our student information systems, which is Advantage, SIS, and Freedom SIS, will be able to generate the GE exports required for the NSLDS spreadsheet submittal upload directly from their site. These exports will be, of course, in the template provided by NSLDS, so that you can easily export and upload them directly to the site. So some things to keep in mind before running your GE exports from your student information system. You want to make sure that you're going to review all program offerings in your SIS to ensure that they are accurate and complete. You want to make sure you're paying attention to information such as your zip codes, your credential levels, your program length, anything associated with the specific required fields that Sally talked about in the previous slides. You also want to make sure that you're reviewing all your program budgets to ensure that your tuition, your fees, everything is updated and accurate. You also want to make sure you're reviewing all your funds offered at your institution. And you also want to make sure you're paying attention to your student enrollments to check for any duplicates, especially if they attempted multiple locations or programs. An important thing to keep in mind is that FAME's SIS is only as accurate as what has been entered in by the institution. So you definitely want to make sure that you're reviewing and double checking all this information prior to doing any upload to NSLDS. As Sally mentioned previously, the reporting deadline has changed from October 1st to January 15th. So we highly recommend that schools take this time to run and review the reports in question prior to doing their upload to ensure that the information listed on these reports is as accurate as possible. There are going to be two export types that are going to be generated from our student information systems. There is going to be a student export, which of course will have all the student-specific information, and it will list all students in programs with Title IV awards. Users will need to run this report for each applicable award year. There is also going to be a program export. The program export is going to have program-specific information. Only for the latest award year of 23-24 will you need this program export. If multiple programs have the same zip code and credential, then you need to report only the program length or weeks in Title IV academic year that is the longest. So within the student export, there are going to be two types of records. There's going to be a TA record, which is a total amount, and that would be applicable to any students that are in a withdrawn graduated. And it's going to include details for the student's entire program. The AA record type, or annual amount, is going to be for any of those students that are currently attending. So it includes only details for the student's current award year. Keep in mind that only the 23-24 award year export will have both AA records and TA records if they exist. For prior award years, schools should only see TA records, so TA records being those students that have graduated or withdrawn. Some important information to keep in mind regarding the student export as you're reviewing the reports. If a student has multiple statuses, whether that be dropped or currently attending, then the status at the end of the reporting period will be reported. If a student has multiple enrollments for the same program, the latest enrollment will be reported, but the charges and awards will be added together. If a student has multiple enrollments for different programs, each enrollment will be reported separately. And if a student has an enrollment for the same program in multiple campuses, the latest enrollment will be reported, but it is important that the charges and awards be reviewed and adjusted if necessary by the school. Again, to keep in mind, if a student is currently attending, they will be a AA record type. So all the information regarding to the AA reporting elements will be completed in the student export. If the student is dropped or graduated, then they will be listed under the TA export type, which will be all the fields associated to the TA requirement based on NSLDS. So if your school is using the Advantage Student Information System, I'm going to be reviewing how you run the GE export out of Advantage. So the Advantage export is located in the reports module. You can use the keyword search at the top of the screen by typing in GE to find the report, or you can select the gainful employment category from the report category selection. From there, you are going to select the DE Data Check report. An important thing to keep in mind is that you ensure that qualifying programs are marked as gainful employment before running the export. You can do this directly from the program maintenance within Advantage, reviewing the programs that would be considered gainful employment so that they're notated correctly in the school setup. Once you open up the GE export, you're going to first select the campus for which you're running the report, and then you're going to make the selection as to which report type you're going to be running. So program submittal is one option, and enrollment submittal is the second. The program submittal, of course, is for the export related to program requirements, and the enrollment submittal is for the student-specific details. You are then going to select the program version for which you are running the report for, and then you're going to select your reporting year. Once you've made those selections, you will click on Export, and the system will generate your Excel file in the NSLDS template with the data necessary for upload based on your selections from the report parameters section. For those schools that are using our Freedom SIS, I'm going to go over how you access the report out of the Freedom application. Some important things to keep in mind with the latest release of the Freedom application, two new areas were updated. The first was program maintenance. The program maintenance screen was updated for program accredited and accrediting agency. Updating this information for all GE programs is important before you run the GE export. Normal users now have access to these newly created fields. Second update was in the award types maintenance screen. It has been updated with a new column named 8-type GE for the GE export. Users should select the appropriate GE 8-type for grants and scholarship awards before running the GE export. In order to run the GE export in Freedom, you're going to first go to the reports section. You're going to select gainful employment. From there, you will select the NSLDS data export. You will select the award year. You're going to select the programs. You'll notate the path, save and export the file. And then finally, once you've made all your selections, you will click export. Something to keep in mind is that for the 23-24, both the program and student export will be generated, but for all other years, only the student export will be provided. Again, the program export is necessary only for the 23-24 award year, and for all other years, the student export will be generated. So now that you have your exports, you've reviewed them, and you're ready to update the information, NSLDS has updated their site, allowing schools to be able to maintain their FBTGE profile, as well as the ability to go ahead and take the exports and upload them directly to NSLDS. And on NSLDS, schools will notice that they now have a new menu option labeled FBTGE. From the FBTGE, you can select the FBTGE maintenance page. Schools may view the reporting type selected by the school on this maintenance page. The FBTG submittal reporting flag will also display one of the following values. It'll either be listed as transitional, standard, or NR. If the school has not selected either transitional or standard for their reporting type, then the FBTG submittal reporting flag will display as NR or not reported. Schools will have the option to update their selected reporting type via the web until January 1st of 2025. If you want to update your reporting type, you can click the Update Reporting Flag button provided on the FBTGE maintenance page, as listed in the screenshot below. When you're ready to upload your GE export to NSLDS, after you've made any adjustments and you've completed your review of the export, you can now upload those files directly to the NSLDS website. From the school menu option, you are going to click on Spreadsheet Submittals. The Spreadsheet Submittal page lets users validate their files before submitting them. This will ensure the formatting is correct and gives users the opportunity to fix any errors. With the changing of the deadline from October 1st to January 15th of 2025, it's important that schools take this time in order to review and upload and validate those files to ensure that there are no errors that need to be addressed prior to their submission to NSLDS. In order to upload your GE export, from the Spreadsheet Submittal page, select Submittal Type from the drop-down menu. You're going to notice that there are a number of options. For the student export, you will need to select FBT GE Spreadsheet Submittal. For the program export, you will need to select the FBT GE program spreadsheet submittal option. You're going to then click on Upload File, and then select the corresponding file to upload. You can then validate the file and review any errors by clicking the Validate button first, but when you're ultimately ready to do your submission, you will then click on the Ready to Submit, which is the Click Validate Submit button. It's important to keep in mind that there is a file size restriction on this upload of 5 megabytes. Any file size over this limit will cause the spreadsheet to be rejected. So keep in mind when you're doing your upload, take a look at the file size to make sure that it is under the 5 megabyte limit. If it is over, you may need to do multiple separations before you do your upload to NSLDS. Again, there are a number of resources that are available. We do anticipate that a number of these will probably be updated over the upcoming days and weeks following this recording based on the extension of the GE reporting deadline to January 15th of 2025. So please check these links frequently for any updates, especially if you have any questions or concerns regarding the report or the NSLDS site itself. Again, our FAME support team is also available to you regarding any questions from the export that's being generated in our SIS. So you can contact us either through our support center, you can send an email directly to support@fameinc.com, or you can contact our 800 number to speak with the live representative. Again, we want to thank you for taking the time to view this recording, and we hope you have a great day. Thanks.